everyone, this is Pramita here. Today this video is going to be a small chit chat session about how I put together this baby. So as you can see, it's pretty chunky now, but what to do? I have this habit of putting too many things perhaps, but this is a hugely requested video. Some of you have wanted to know how I had put together this notebook. So for that, what I did was I was already having an insert with full pages, like it came with a ton of pages, and I had a few other mini dories also which I wanted to use the pages, and I had used some of the pages in a previous project of mine. So I was left with some extra pages from the month of April, and I had my May dory. So I thought that I'm going to add them together and restitch them to form my May journal. And on top of that, what I did was, me being me, I added 4 pattern papers. So I'm going to show you the collections that I used, but it's not that important because anything which is cohesive, or if it goes with the color scheme, will do. It doesn't mean that you have to buy that or anything of that sort. This was a paper pad I have from Kane Company. It is a double-sided paper pad, and I have used 2 papers from here, and I have used 2 from this paper pad. This is actually single-sided, this paper, if you can recollect, this is one of the pages that I had made with, and the other page I think is gone. Yeah, I'm not sure. So these are the 2 papers, paper pads actually, that I have used to add more pages to my insert. And what I would like to show that is, when you're making an insert, now I generally hand stitch or hand staple them. Now I'm going to just show you briefly. This is a 12 by 12 sheet of paper. Don't mind this. I have cut this portion off because it had an image that I liked. I used it in some of my journal. So this is a standard size insert which I have stapled with irregular pages as usual, and I'm going to show you, after making an insert, you will be left with a little bit of offcut on both the sides. Like, after making the insert, you will be left with this side as well as some on the top. So what I did was, after chopping off these 2 portions, I kept them and added them in my notebook insert when I was stitching them. So before stitching, what I would suggest is you rearrange the papers very carefully, and try to keep the papers as much as possible within the boundary of the standard size paper, but it will obviously peek through, because once you fold the papers, they will bulk up the center portion and then it'll peek through. So I don't stitch my covers. What I do is, after stapling them or stitching them, I add the covers by just gluing a little bit over here, because firstly it covers the ends pretty well, even if your edges are not lined with each other. It doesn't matter because the finish looks nice. And the other is that I don't like my staples or stitching to show through. So that's another thing. So these are some of the notebooks that I have made. I often send them in my Happy Mail, or I use them myself using offcuts or some 12 by 12 sheet of papers. Like this was a 12 by 12 sheet of paper. This was an A4 size paper. This was a offcut from a previous project that I had done. So, and I've punched over here on this page. This was an offcut from a previous project. Now if you have too long a paper, okay, so try to fold this and keep it a little bit shorter, on the shorter side, because if you want to chop it off, you can always do that later on. But if you keep it till the edge, when you're finishing off the edge with the craft knives or whatever X-cut knives or whatever you have, or rotary trimmer is the best. Then you will chop this off in an irregular fashion. You won't get a pocket or tuck spot or whatever. So it's better to keep it a little bit short on the shorter side so that it doesn't get chopped off when you're trimming the sides. And that is one thing you can keep in mind. Another thing is that before stapling or before stitching, I would advise you to rearrange the papers whichever way you like this. In the center part, as you can see, I had two offcuts. So what I did was I stapled both. So from the center you have two pages with small offcuts. Now if I want, I can add some collage sort of thing over here, some layering techniques out here, and this will make the page look more interesting. So before stapling, stitching, whatever, you should rearrange the papers very carefully, and then what you can do is use binder clips at the edges so that they don't move when you're stapling or when you're stitching. So that's another thing that you should keep in mind. First is rearranging, keeping in mind if you want to have these fold outs, to keep the page well within the limits of the outer edge so that they don't get chopped off. It doesn't matter if they are a little bit towards the center, because you can always pull them and straighten them out. It's not a big deal. You can stick this portion with washi tape or with PVA glue a little bit out here and make it into a tuck spot or a pocket, or you can keep it as a flip out. And that's that. And of course you can add tip-ins later when you are using it as your journal. So I tend to do that a lot, and I also add a lot of tabs and pockets and stuff like that. So this is another pocket that I have made. I love to make pockets in my journals because what I do is not usually, but in this case what I did was, when I was stitching this notebook, I went through my stash of papers, I went through my stash of die cuts, ephemera, everything, and I more or less selected a few items which I would like to use in my journal, this journal specifically, because I knew it already went with a color theme. Now usually when I journal, the journals I journal into do not have any preconceived color scheme. So it's up to me how I set them up, what sort of color tone do I want on the pages. Do I always have any color scheme going? No, but sometimes I do. There's no fixed pattern to this. But in this case, the tone was already set because it was in green. It had too much green, and I had incorporated some pinks also, some yellows also. So I wanted this to look, very cohesive. So what I did was, I already chose some of the ephemera, some of the offcuts, papers that I would like to use in this journal, and I kept them aside in a separate way. That was like my organization. And some book pages that I would use here, some book ephemera I have already chosen and kept aside. So that was how I wanted to go with the theme of the journal. Now that was mainly because I had thought that I would not be able to do anything in May. Unfortunately, I am very busy, but I still can't stop myself from decorating the pages. And yes, I do prep my pages ahead. I'm going to show you briefly what I do. It's not that I do everything at one go. Like what I did was, when I added this small page, what I did was I added this frame. I had said earlier also, I love frames, and I think they add a lot of interest in your journals, And this was a die cut. I added that. This was a ticket ephemera, and I've just layered that on washi. But see how I have put that? I have not put that in a straight fashion. It's just a little bit tilted. so that it peeks through a little bit, but not much. And on the next page, what I've done is I've used a half frame, and I've used this ephemera from a paper pad, and this is a sticker from Simple Stories. It says hello sunshine smile. So, and I've used this frame to bring these things out. And on this page, like, I've used two die cuts, and I've made a tag which a cluster. At the back also there is one library card, you can journal on that. So, and I've added a small, so it's not that I prep everything, it's not like that. Like in this flip out, I have not done anything, I've just added this tab for, maybe I'll add the date out here. But I prep about 80% of the pages so that journaling is easy. I don't spend too much time on journaling. So what I do is, when I get time, I sit down with all my supplies strewn all around, because I have said previously I don't have any fixed craft space. There is practically no space in my house as my craft space. So what I do is I sit in a corner of my bed, and I take a low stool, I throw everything on the bed, and I start putting things together. And so that's why I try to keep my crafty sessions pretty long. Like, I do it about 2-3 hours at a stretch, or maybe more, and then I wind up everything down, because now I have the pages prepped 80%, and I can just go in journal, and then maybe stamp or write or put a little bit of sticker here and there. So that's what I love to do. And I found that it made journaling pretty smooth, because you don't need to take out all your supplies every day. You don't need to sift through a lot of stuff every day. So you do it once a week, or maybe twice a week if that suits you, and prep the pages ahead, and you know what you're going to do the next day, because the tone is already set. Like, I know what I'm going to do on this page, because I know I can't fit my journaling over here for the whole day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue on this page also. So that's that. So you have a preconceived idea about what you're going to do, because staring at a blank white page can be pretty intimidating. And so I prefer having inserts with pattern papers, so that way you already have a tone set, you don't have to think too much. But if you are very creative, I would always suggest that you go with the plain paper, because that will give you and like, to create whatever you want. So that was that. And I'm going to show you a few of the inserts that I had already made, and I've kept them for later use. So this is just a moment. Now this is a insert that I've made. I have a pocket on the outside. This actually came from a art book which has a still life, how to paint still life and instructions, how to mix colors. It was that kind of a book, and I have added that small book page to it. This is another page, this is another page. I'm just going to do a quick flip. Okay, so this was another page from that still life book. That book was pretty old, and I have this pocket, which if I want I can fold it like this, or if I want I can keep it like this. I can decorate in the front, it depends, whatever suits my fancy. So this is another part from that book. And yes, you can journal over here. If you have gesso, or if you have whiteners, you can white out this portion, or you can use a pattern paper to cover this up, and then you can journal in them, over them, sorry. And here it goes.